Whether it's to introduce a classic game to a new generation, maintain interest in a character, or just make a fast buck, the past several years have seen numerous series resurfacing. And while we love that they're trying, sometimes not all games make successful reincarnations. And that's why we're here to bust their balls. Hey, I'm Stuttering Craig for ScrewAttack's Top 10 Worst Reboots and Remakes.
Number 10.
Let's start off with a little bit of Bionic Commando. No, not those awesome downloadable titles. We're talking about the other one. Man, did they fuck this up. Not so much from a gameplay standpoint, but from the, hey, let's have Brad Spencer lose all his Duke Nukem-esque personality and throw generic brosive dreads on him standpoint. Nobody likes dreads on video game characters. But hey, let's give Capcom some credit. They tried to make the story epic with huge twists like, everybody say it with me, your wife being a mechanical arm. God, that's dumb.
Number 9.
This little foul-mouthed fucker was so cute on the N64. So when Conker was brought back on the Xbox in the form of Conker Live and Reloaded, oh boy were we excited. Not just for the single player, but mostly the thought of Conker's multiplayer being on an Xbox Live. Rare pushed the ever-loving hell out of the live aspect of this game, even including it in the game's name. But what we got instead was a remastered single player with the only multiplayer aspect being based around the Saving Private Ryan spoof of the game. Even though the new multiplayer could be entertaining at times, it wasn't even close to how much fun the old multiplayer was and still is to this day.
He missed the designer. No more surprises, please.
Number 8.
Pac-Man isn't exactly rocket science. I mean, you eat the dots and you don't get hit by ghosts. That's it. So why, in the official sequel I might add, am I a passive weenie who gets yelled at by Miss Pac-Man and gets chased by bees? This has nothing to do with this. It took over a damn decade, and this is what they came up with for the triumphant return of Pac-Man. Shooting a slingshot. Yeah.
Number 7.
Golden Axe is an arcade and Genesis classic. Ask a lot of folks growing up during the Sega Nintendo rivalry, and they're going to say this is one of the games they remember seeing in the commercials. After 3 successful Golden Axes back in the day, it was about time to put this series out to pasture and just call it a good career. But no. Sega had to dust it off and put in an extremely generic cross between God of War and Guitar Hero of all things. It's extremely forgettable, with one minor exception.
Buy my balls, girl! Number 6.
God, I hate this game. This disaster would have been higher if it wasn't for the rest of the ScrewAttack crew's non-hatred for this crap. You know how I feel about the original? Well, it took about 20 seconds of playing this remake to know you were not playing the same game. Drab colors, extremely forgettable music, and what the hell happened to the gameplay? It's like the developers just unzipped their pants, rolled down their panties, and took a dump on my childhood in the arcades.
No! Number 5.
Speaking of taking dumps on classic franchises, there was a time when games that were really popular in 2D form all of a sudden just had to switch to 3D. It was like gaming law for a while. As a result, we saw a lot of shit put out. Final Fight Streetwise was one of those casualties. While the gameplay was just pathetic, that wasn't even the worst part. Would someone explain to me why Cody turns into a giant monster at the end of the game?
Cody.
No!
Number 4.
What started as a pen and paper RPG turned into a cyberpunk point-and-click RPG for the SNES and Genesis. Shadowrun was truly a unique, underrated gem about cybercrime and hacking. So after having to wait a decade for a new Shadowrun, why in the world would we come up with this? A multiplayer FPS? No RPG bits, no hacking, no cyberpunk setting. It's not even a good FPS. It was so bad, the developers actually shut down 4 months after its release, and the servers weren't even up a full year. It just goes to show, you can't take a cult classic, make it a shooter, and expect to see money just rolling on in. Thank God.
Number 3.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 variety. It's not a reboot in the traditional sense, but Sega did call it one and say it was supposed to revolutionize the Sonic franchise. And it did. Sonic 06 was a game that nearly destroyed the franchise. This game is filled with horrible design, so let me elaborate a bit. If you get hit against the wall in your first fight with Silver, you'll lose your rings, landing on them again so you can keep you alive, and immediately get caught by Silver's attack before you can even get away. Rinse, repeat, forever. And ever. Yeah. Plus, when the game ends, the characters reverse time so that none of the events even occurred, making this already stupid plot all the more pointless. And one last thing. Furry fetishes should never be a central plot to a game. Ever.
Number 2.
Now, a lot of you may be surprised this is not at the top of the list, but it definitely warrants a spot this high. Taking one of the most cute and cuddliest characters in video game history and turning him into a generic cyborg guy that's gritty and lifeless was such a bad idea. The dudes at Hudson even laugh about it today. They know at their offices this game sucked. Other Bomberman games have him as a reluctant robot who's trying to become a human or a champion of the planet Bomber. But in Act Zero, you play as Bomberman, or Bomberwoman, who is a slave to a sadistic gladiatorial game broadcast across the world. Terrible power-ups, camera, and the same map over and over. It's like they tried making it more generic. Let's hit the old recap before we get to number 1. Number 10, Bionic Commando. Number 9, Conquer Live and Reloaded. Number 8, Pac-Man 2. Number 7,
By my balls!
Number 6, TMNT Reshield. I hate that game. Number 5, Final Fight Streetwise. Number 4, Shadowrun. Number 3, Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 variety. And number 2, Bomberman Act 0.
It's number 1.
The only thing worse than making an old school franchise hardcore is to take an old school franchise and make it more hardcore. After all, nothing screams Space Invaders like shooting up giant bugs in the ghetto, right? This game's got everything you need to be edgy and mature. Ravaged urban environments, grenades, drama, some swearing, and even an entirely pointless shower scene. Once again, this is the reboot of Space Invaders. Does any of that make you think of this at all? With Bomberman Act Zero, you can at least kind of see the correlation between its predecessors. But with Space Raiders, there's nothing. Nothing whatsoever.